Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, November the 13th, 2025, and today we are talking about kaolin clay for those things like squash bugs. Is it too late to start next year's garden, and would there be any value to tarping under snow? Plus, we look at vermicompost in a seed starting mix. So let's do it. All right, happy Thursday to you all. I hope everyone is doing and feeling well. The main chunk of the week is over and the weekend is almost upon us. Should be fun. A couple things. Tomorrow will be a different kind of episode. We are trying something a little bit new and a little bit old. That'll make sense tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. Also, how awesome was Yoko yesterday? Alex and Yoko are some of my favorite farmers. So if you missed the interview from yesterday with Osawaga Farm, make sure to check that out and also look forward to a future episode with Alex on their composting system. Good stuff all around. Yesterday was a pretty normal day for me where I did some farm cleanup stuff in the morning and then ran a delivery. I forgot to bring about 20 pounds of lettuce with me, so we had to take that back later in the day. Love when that happens. I'm always thrown off my game in the fall when, the rhythms of the week change due to the weather and we have to do things like harvest around freezes. So I don't expect it to be the last mistake of the month, but hopefully the biggest. Unrelated, I wanted to say rest in peace to the American penny. The last ones were minted yesterday in Philadelphia because the last ones were used in an actual transaction sometime in the early aughts. Anyway, that's not super relevant to farming, obviously, but it is a pretty historical change. I can't promise my dad jokes are going to be good. I can just promise they will be. All right, so as is tradition on Thursdays, we will try to tackle a few Patreon questions to stay caught up over there as best we can. Of course, heading into the winter, I can always use more show fodder, so Patreon members, make sure to get your questions and topic suggestions up in the November show thread. Okay, so for today's first Patreon question, it comes to us from Patreon member Lee Kossab, who asks, quote, "Hi, Jesse. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about kaolin clay. I've mostly heard of it in reference to fruit trees, but I've wondered about other uses. For example, this late summer and fall, I had a beautiful crop of spaghetti squashes coming along, but then drought and intense pest pressure ensued. I couldn't harvest before they were ripe/mature, but it felt like I was just providing a buffet for the squash bugs and a little green worm that was getting into them. And indeed I was. Laughing till you're crying emoji. I ended up with only about 3 edible spaghetti squashes. Started out with about 30 and very nice squashes forming on a partial row of about 8 plants. This is my first year, so I'm hoping the pests won't be so much of an issue as I build my soil. But could I have sprayed the squashes with kaolin clay for protection during that period of waiting for them to mature? Other thoughts/uses/precautions about using it? Thanks for being awesome," end quote. All right, so an interesting question here, Lee. Thank you. You're in luck to some extent because kaolin clay is indeed occasionally used in squash plantings to protect from various bugs, including squash bugs. To back up, kaolin clay comes from a mined mineral of the same name, or also called kaolinite, that is most often associated with paper making to improve printability and appearance, among other non-ag uses. But indeed, in agriculture, this ground-up mineral is most commonly applied to organic farms for pest protection on fruits and vegetables, as it creates a thin sort of white border around the plant leaves and then sort of irritates the skin of the pests that come in contact with it, deterring them from coming back or sticking around. Interestingly, my assumption would be that coating a plant with a white clay film would reduce the photosynthetic rates, and in some cases and ways it does do that, but in a great sense does not make science lesson. There are a number of good studies that show a net positive in terms of yields. One study on tomatoes with kaolin clay, specifically the product Surround WP, found a 21% increase in marketable yields of kaolin clay treated plants versus the control. The researchers found a slight reduction in photosynthetic rate, but that the reduction in heat stress and pest pressure improved the production. There are some papers that find improvements in photosynthesis, in fact, to the entire canopy, as well as improvements in water use efficiency with perennials from the use of kaolin clay products during times of high heat and solar radiation stress, even when the individual leaves may show lower rates of photosynthesis. This isn't me endorsing it or saying it will improve yields, just to be clear about that, but especially in areas with heat stress, there may be benefits on top of pest deterrents, but of course, trial it before employing it on a large scale if you do decide to use it. Now, obviously, Obviously, adding kaolin clay products generates more work on your end, and you should always be working to improve your soil and habitat for beneficials. But as far as organic products go, this one seems relatively reasonable to me. You can just dip the leaves before transplanting to ease the work of spraying it in the fields. Obviously, follow directions and application rates and all that good stuff. But sure, there may be some there. Some notes of caution, though. Don't breathe it in. That's the first one. Wear a mask or some sort of face covering when handling it. Also, don't spray the flowers of plants you are spraying, as there may be some negative effects to the beneficial insects as well as the dweebish ones. I guess that would be my biggest hesitation with kaolin clay, that this is a bit of a broad spectrum pesticide or protectant, meaning it's not just targeting the bugs you don't want, but also the ones that you definitely do want. Again, as I often say, a lot of your pest management will come down to healthy soil and good timing and good moisture management. But if that's not working, it seems to me there are worse things than kaolin clay for sure. Anyway, what say you all? Is this a product that you've used or that you've had experience with? Penny for your thoughts. Sorry, that's the last one, I promise. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it is too late to start a garden, and would a tarp help under snow? Both those questions. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. Farmers who partnered with Farmhand say they grew an average of 63% this year because it's more than software. Farmhand is your business coach and assistant, helping to sell out, save time, and grow smarter with real data from real farms, shaping websites that convert, campaigns that sell, and fulfillment systems that run smoothly. Curious what that looks like? Meet the founder, Ari, at farmhand.partners/no-till and see the same insights and support the fastest growing farms rely on every week. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Finding Ground Farm, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse. We are heading into winter weather quickly here in West Michigan, Zone 6A. Before we know it, we will probably have snow on the ground since last year. We had snow on Halloween. Unpopular opinion, I actually like the snow. You can do a lot of fun stuff in the snow. I digress. My question is there value to covering a new garden area that is currently a field with a silage tarp now to overwinter? If not, what is the best way to work on converting unused land into market space at this point in the season? Am I better off to just wait until the spring? Thanks in advance," end quote. All right, this is a great question. Thank you. And I firmly agree about the snow. Usable snow would be a huge upgrade for us. I think I have talked about this fact a few times, probably a bunch of times on the show, but one of the things that makes living in Kentucky so hard over the winter is just how little there is to do here in the winter, because we get a lot of cold, but without the snow. Mostly we get ice and then mud during the day and then back to ice or whatever in the evening and then mud. And not like ice skating ice, like more like crunchy ice or destroying power lines ice. We find a way to do things and get outdoors, but between the lack of sunlight and the lack of useful precipitation, it can be a little challenging. Anyway, back to your question. Listeners should know that I did answer this when it came in, just to ensure it was addressed in time, because they added the alarm bell, and obviously it's past Halloween, so Patreon members, just keep that in mind. But for anyone listening, there might still be time before the snowpack or, well, just frozen ground really sets in for you. Here is what I would do in that scenario. The first part of the question was if there was a value in covering what I assume is a fallow field with a silage tarp now over winter to prep it for the spring, or for getting a spring garden started. Going into the winter, generally speaking, not really. Now, the reason for that is that the silage tarps really do require some amount of heat and sun to be most effective. You want them to warm the soil slightly to germinate weed seeds, but also in order to kill existing plants. You want the tarps keeping the area around the plants warm to encourage growth, but cutting off light to discourage photosynthesis at the same time. This wears the plants out and eventually suffocates them. In the winter, this warm occultation effect doesn't really happen so much, and the plants largely go dormant, especially up there where I imagine the weeds are likely used to a few months of darkness under the snowpack. The other reason is that you may still want to shape beds, presumably in the spring. And if so, then you would be, like undoing any of the good work the tarps had done to germinate weed seeds and kill the weeds by bringing up new weed seeds and then reshaping those beds, assuming you will be raising them, which in a cold, wet climate is generally the recommendation. So in an ideal scenario, you would plow that plot up now if you plan to plow, which would include adding your amendments, then shape those beds, and then tarp over the winter to prevent erosion. One thing to consider, though, is if your soil is wet at all right now, you've probably missed the window. You will just have to wait until spring so as not to create compaction. You could add a tarp, won't necessarily hurt, though snow is laden with good minerals, so it may be fine to just leave the tarp off for now. If you plan to do deep compost mulching in the spring as well, the tarp would probably be a fine thing to have down now because you wouldn't have to worry about the weed seeds coming up when you work the soil in the spring if you'd plan to do that. Anyway, I hope something in there was helpful. I hope you all enjoy your snow. I will look on with envy in muddy boots. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, making your own vermicompost-based seed starting mix. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 47 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all one word, 26NOTILL, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Marble Seed. The Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference attracts a wide range of regenerative and organic farmers for 3 days of skill development and community building. Farmer Drew Kramer said, "Going to Marble Seed was so invigorating at a time when I needed it most. I picked up tools I'm already using." The conference is the final week in February in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Early registration opens December 4th at conference.marbleseed.org. That's conference.marbleseed.org. All right, back to the show. All right, our last Patreon question of the day comes to us from Jesse Turretts, who writes, quote, "Hey again, Farmer Jesse. My best supplier of seed starting soil had to increase their prices over the last couple years. With that, plus poor quality from every other option I have access to, I decided to try an idea. I started a little worm compost, and I've been mixing that with coconut coir and vermiculite until just right. It's honestly been an incredible boon so far, and I almost instantly saw a benefit from adding the mix to the beds via transplants. 3 questions. What problems should I be thinking about as I continue working with this idea? What ideas come up for you about how you might optimize making seed soil out of a vermicompost? Can I trade the vermiculite for anything that isn't a mined product? I'd love to use something I can locally source or is at least more ecological, but you tell me if I'm being silly. Thanks as always, Jesse," end quote. All right, thanks, Jesse. And so generally speaking, that sounds like a fine mix. But my concerns, if I have any for you in terms of seed starting, are going to be the moisture and the air. Vermiculite is really good at moisture retention. This is why growers will sprinkle some on the surface of their transplants after seeding them. It holds that moisture/humidity in really well. However, your vermicompost is likely already doing that. So there's really not a ton of need for the vermiculite in the mix. Now, to me, the thing that you are likely missing here is actually the aeration element. That can be agricultural sand or it could be perlite. But since you are wanting to, stay away from mined products, then perhaps the sand makes sense, which itself is also sort of mined, but that's for a different story. We used to use creek bottom sand that we'd get from a neighbor, which was rich with silt and also sometimes weed seed. So it can be a little complicated. However, if you're just adding this as a soil conditioner and not trying to start seeds in it, then I bet your soils are loving this mix out there in those dry conditions. That's a great mix for soil moisture retention and nutrition. Worm compost is obviously among the best, but for starting seeds, I'm going to guess that you will start running into some death in those trays if you have not already. And that will likely stem from the lack of airflow and probably just excessive moisture. Just look around for one aeration element and you should be good to go. Also, you can supplement that vermicompost with regular compost if you want to stretch it a little further, because making a lot of that could probably get expensive. Anyway, I hope that was helpful and that I answered some of those questions. Thank you for your support as always, and we're going to call it a Thursday. Reminder that tomorrow will be a special episode, and then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled ramblings on Monday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of November, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Dorina Gaber, Laura Zwanek. Just try those. And Kim, who bumped up. Thanks, Kim. All right, so as you will remember from this week's story, our governor friend, Governor Ginger, has discovered a new plant and has used some of the many university contacts she had made working as the governor to ask them to help her identify it. And at this point, 4 or 5 of them have come, taken samples, and then effectively ghosted her. So also using her vast connections, she contacts an investigator to go find at least one of these people and get them to at very least respond to her. It's getting to be late in the season, and well, she's afraid that this plant is going to die from a frost or whatever before anyone can tell her what in the world the dang thing is. Then, one night, the temps are expected to dip to frosty temperatures, so she decides to cover the plant to protect it just to make sure that it survives, so somebody will eventually identify it for her. But when she goes out there, it's gone. Someone has dug up the entire plant. Who? Why? Well, that is for tomorrow on Governor Ginger Hits Gold. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you then. Bye.